things that you might want to consider before exporting your comedy. First of all, you need to know who is the owner of this particular work that you're willing to export. And so there is a difference between the author and the owner of a particular work. So when you create a particular work, like you write your comedies and all that, you're the author of it, but it's possible that the owner of your work might be like the company or someone that you're signed to, or someone that is funding that particular production, or someone that has the right to commercially exploit that particular work. So if you look at the Angel production, there is this little girl that acts there. I've forgotten her name. She is merely an actress or an actor in the production. She is not the owner of the production. So in those kind of situations, let's assume that she comes up with a particular joke or whatever. She might be the author of that particular thing, but she's not the owner of it, because I'm sure that the ownership of the creative skits that they produce is for Angel Company. And so it's important that when people who are in the comedy industry are planning to collaborate with people, they ensure that they sign a contract, not just a gentleman stuff, stating who is going to be the owner of this work that we are creating. Is it a joint ownership? And then talking about the copyrights, there is like, it's divided into two. So there's a moral part and there's the economic part. So the moral part is saying that you have a right to state that you are the owner. Sorry, if possibly I'm using your work, I would have to state that you are the author of that work. And I'm supposed to use it in a way that it doesn't harm your reputation and the rest. But the economic side is who can reproduce it, who can sell it, who can put it up for sale, who can give out licenses, permissions, and the rest. So you have to determine who the owner of the work is and who the author of the work is. Then also, secondly, before going into the export market, you also have to be sure that your work is properly protected. So when I mean protection, copyright is an automatic right, meaning that once you put it in a fixed form, then it belongs to you. But it's important that people go like a step further to actually register it with the government to ensure that just in case it's being infringed upon, you have someone to corroborate the fact that you are the first person or you are the owner of the work. Plus, you have a certificate, you have a prima facie evidence, etc. So it's important to also know that if you are using a name, for example, Angel or Frank Donga or something, that particular name that you are using, you can go a step further to trademark that name. Now, that trademark is actually territorial, not universal. So when going into the export market, you have to do your due diligence to ensure that nobody in that export market is already using that name. So let's assume that you're invited to the US to do a particular stand-up comedy, and you're actually going there with your merchandising kit. So you're going there with your face caps and your shirts and everything, or maybe you contract someone there to actually do it for you, and you are going to a territory where somebody is already using that name that you are using or that logo that you are using. It's obvious that you're going to be infringing on another person's right. And so when going into the export market, you have to try to do your due diligence to ensure that you would not be infringing on another person's right, and also trying to register your intellectual property in that particular market that you're going to, because the fact that you registered your intellectual property in Nigeria does not give you that same protection in another country. So for copyrights, Nigeria is a signatory to the Berne Convention. So over 170 something countries are also signatories. So it's assumed that when you copyright your work here, that it's automatically protected and respected in those other countries. But for things like trademark, patent, design, and the rest, you would have to do them in those countries. So you can decide to either protect your work nationally, which is doing it in Nigeria, doing it in US, and trying to pick the countries that you think that you might be invited to, or you can also decide to go through the regional route or the international route. Now, for people who do skits, what I usually advise my clients is you can decide to do like a copyright of your work in singles, that's like each episode, or you can put them together as a collection, but it's important that you actually do that. Now, what you're copywriting is not the idea per se, because you might see something happening about Buhari today in the news and you do a particular joke about it, and someone else does another joke about Buhari and you feel that the person has infringed on your right. No, what you're protecting is the way you expressed it in your own presentation. And so if someone like Lasisi has his work on, let's say, YouTube, and someone goes to take his work and is trying to use it somewhere else, they would have to take his permission to use it, because he has a protection over the way he has chosen to express his own work. Yeah, so there is also the there is also something about slogans and all that. So for some people in the comedy industry, they have ways that they introduce themselves or that they introduce their jokes. So for those specific slogans that you use, it's also good that you actually do the trademarks for those slogans, so that it's something that is peculiar to you. So you can do the trademark and the copyright for them, copyright protection, knowing that whoever wants to do a joke and decides to use those slogans the way you use them would have clearly infringed on your work. I've already spoken on freedom to operate, which is before going into any foreign market, ensure that you check that you're not infringing on anybody's rights. And after checking that and you've ensured that you're not doing that, then it's advisable that you also register your work there. Now, before something else I see a lot of is people in the comedy business use a lot of other people's work in their work. For example, a comedian might be dancing to another person's song and all that. So most people feel that once they acknowledge the owner of the work, then they have the right to it. The fact that you acknowledge someone does not give you the right to actually use that particular work. There's something like fair use, but I don't think commercially using another person's work in your work that you're going to sell covers for fair use. No, it doesn't. So what you need to use someone's work in your work, for example, if someone writes your jokes, you need to either buy it off or license it from the person, or come into an agreement with the person that, okay, this is the royalty that you will get from any money that is gotten from this. That is one thing that you can do. Then you can also try to get license. So if you are going to use someone's song in your video, there's something called the synchronization license, meaning that you are able to compensate both the composer of the work and the master recording rights holder. So the composer of the work is like the song writer and the producer, while the master recording rights holder is the person that actually paid for the recording or has the rights to the master rights. Now, for you to try to dodge paying two different people this. People can go through independent artists, etc. But it's important because if you look at YouTube channels, yesterday I was going through Lassisi's YouTube channels and some other people's channels, and you discover that wherever they use people's songs, you would see all those songs listed under their YouTube channels. So if you should play a video that actually uses another person's work, you would see all the owners of that particular work. So if you have the owners of those works there, you might not be able to monetize those works the way you would do but if you are able to show that you have the license to it, then you can upload it on your YouTube channel saying, I have the license to use this work. So for some people, they also go through Creative Commons license and all those things. But it's important that you get your licensing right. And then, okay. Then, okay, so I'll also talk about contracts. So contracts differ from people to people, from companies to companies, and from partnerships, and different contracts apply to different people. But it's important that when entering into a contract, you look at certain clauses. So you can look at the refund policy clause, you can look at the ownership clause, who has the right to record, etc. Just try to look at the clauses, the payment structure, and if you're going into a collaboration, as I stated before, ensure who the owner of the work is. So in the music industry, you discover that after a song has blown, somebody now comes to say, oh my God, I was among the songwriters of this particular song. The reason why they have this is because there was no agreement signed in the first place. So in the music industry, we have something like the split sheet agreement, where everyone who writes a particular song writes what they contributed and the percentage that they are contributing to the particular work. So even in the comedy industry, I think it's also important to know who the owners of a particular work is, or a series of episodes is. Is it you that owns the work? Is it your company? Is it both of you who are partnering? So if Frank Donga decides to partner with Lassisi, you people should be able to know who owns this particular work, how is the royalty going to be shared, etc. Then for those who are into merchandising, or those who might be able to license some of the products that they're going into as a result of the comedy industry, they should also be able to tell the people who they are licensing their rights to, who would own that particular work and who would own the improvements of that particular work. Also, you're also supposed to look at the court's jurisdiction. So if there is an issue, which court has the right to actually look at that? So if it's in Nigeria, it's the Federal High Court. But if you're entering into an international contract, then you should be able to determine which of the courts has the right to it. Is it which of the courts has the jurisdiction to your that's if there's a dispute. Is it the court in Nigeria or the court in the other person's country? Also, what laws applies to it? How do you want to resolve your disputes? Do you want to first go through ADR and then go to litigation, etc.? So also, you have to know if you're signing a 360 agreement, a 360 deal agreement. So it's possible that you enter the comedy industry and you do not have the funds to shoot your skits, just as some people might have cameras and everything in their homes and offices. So you might decide to be signed onto a maybe comedy label or something like that. So if you're signed to them and they're the people that are deciding to put that funds into your work, they might decide to give you like a 360 contract where they say everything that comes in after this point as a result of this investment that you're making up on top of your head is actually going to be, some of the percentage will come to us. So I look at a lot of music agreements. Sorry, I'm using that as an example. You would see that some of the record labels might even claim up to 70% and all that because they're actually putting in the work. And so when you get endorsement deals or you get merchandising deals or you get programs and all that, they would actually have that cut from it. And then even the works that you have actually created might not be for you at the end. So for you to now post your own work and for you to now monetize your own work, you might now need to get permission from them even after you leave that contract because they've signed it in perpetuity. So you have to also know the timing. How long are you signing with them for? How long do they have a right to your work? That's if you are giving them your work. You also have to look at that. Also, the name that you are using. So if you are using a name and you're signed to and you actually signed to a company, and that company goes to trademark your name, like what happened to Kiss Daniel, you discover that when it's time for you to leave, they might hold on to that name, and so you would be the one to be licensing your name from them. So I've already explained this. So you also have to understand how you want your pricing to be. So if you're going into the international market, it's good that you have all your IPs sorted out so that you can be a formidable brand that is not tilting and shaking everywhere, and then understand your fundraising options and know what you're giving in return for the funding that you're getting. Then also know how to conform or work with the foreign country. That's the laws in the foreign countries that you're going to, their regulations, their norms, etc. So if you're going to an Islamic nation, you should know that you're not supposed to make a joke with their prophet because they would actually stone you out of that place. So you have to know where you're going to and know how to align your jokes to what would work there. Then determine if you want to use alternative dispute resolutions or you want to go straight to litigation if something should happen. And if you should sign for a show and it doesn't happen and it's not your fault, you should be able to know if you're supposed to refund it or if you're not refunding, if it's a full refund or partial. Understand the terms and conditions, yes, I said. Also, you are also supposed to try to educate your team on the practices, that's the standard practices of your brand. So if you have a team and that team is in charge of rendering your videos and posting your work online and all that, so if the person in charge of it decides to add infringing materials to your work, you discover that you might run foul of different regulations. So it's important that the team that you're working with that edits your skits or whatever knows what they're supposed to put. So you might have a regulation that says, we do not use other people's songs in my video. Any underlining music that will go with my video has to be originally created by us. So if you have that stated and you bring in a new team member that is not aware of it, the person might say, oh, they want to add like vibes to your stuff and put something there. So you have to regularly update your team. And copyright, which has to do with, okay, let me just talk about the duration of the copyright. So for the write-ups and all that, you have it for a lifetime, and then you have it for 70 years after. After that, it goes into public domain. Public domain means that anybody can decide to use your work, and then we have the related rights. Under related rights, we have the performers, producers, and the broadcasters. So for the performers, which the comedians fall under, you have a right to fix your work. You have a right to choose who records your live performance. Then I'm not sure if we have CMOs, that's collective management organizations for people in the comedy industry, but I know that we have it for actors and we have it for singers. So what these people do is that you register with them, and then you give them your catalog. They put it in so they can take licenses on your behalf. They can collect royalties on your behalf, and then also share it. So like in the music industry, you can put your songs on iTunes, Spotify, etc., and you can get your royalties. Aside from that, there's also the royalties for public performance. So singing in a place, even a live performance, you're entitled to collecting your royalties if it's played on the TV, radio, etc. So that kind of thing now will be slowly coming into the industry. So for people who are will be licensing their comedy skits and their films and their every other thing to digital media providers, they would now have to put in like who is the author of the work, who is the owner of the work, who are the performers in the work, and then everybody will be entitled to royalty streams. So it's important that when signing contracts with people for your comedy work, you can also state that that if you want to do it that way, that the only remuneration that they have is the one-time fee that you are giving to them. So if you're bringing in an actor to act with you, like I see there's a comedian that I know that when he acts, like he used to do like a classroom style, and he has like 10 or 15 students in the class and all that. So for him now, he can have a contract with them saying that if he's paying them, that what they get is a one-time fee. They are not entitled to any royalties that might come up in the future. So if he doesn't state it like that, and he leaves it open, possibly when the royalties start coming in, those people might request that they also want to be on the payroll, since there's even no split sheet agreement to that fact. So how do you do your work without infringing on another person's rights before you go into the international market, so that you don't go with infringing materials? First of all, do your prior search to be sure that everything that you say you own, you actually own it, and then try to get licenses for your works. Licenses from the composer, from the recorder, or if you're using pictures from the person who painted it or whatever, just try to get all the licenses that you can get. And then there are some instances where you might not need permission. So if you are using a work that's in public domain, so if you want to do like a Christmas video and you decide that you want to pick songs that are already in public domain, you can just type Christmas songs in public domain, and once you're able to click it, once you're able to get it, you can actually use it. So songs in public domain, etc. And then some of the things to consider in this digital age might be illegal downloads, IP policies, domain name theft, and cyber squatting, etc. When your work is being infringed upon, you have to know that the government is not going to start looking for who is infringing on your work. You're the police of your work. So if your work is infringed, try to get a screenshot of who is infringing on your work, send a cease and desist letter. You can also write to the service provider for a takedown notice, get a lawyer, use ADR, or you can use the inspectors at NCC. So I'll just stop here. Thank you very much.